Today, let's dive into the legendary life of a man who gave up the highest seat of power for a divine calling, a prime minister who became a saint, someone whose words were so beautiful, so pure, they were considered actual gems. This is the incredible story of Manikyavasagar.
But let's start with a wild question. Just imagine for a second, what if a collection of poems was so holy, so powerful, that God himself showed up in human form just to be the one to write it all down? It sounds impossible, right? Well, that's the central miracle in the life of the saint we're talking about today.
That book is the Tiruvasagam, a sacred masterpiece of Tamil literature for devotees of Lord Shiva. And the legend says the original manuscript had the most unbelievable signature you could imagine, a little note saying that Lord Shiva was the scribe. So the question is, who was the man whose words could inspire something like that?
Well, to understand the saint, we have to go back in time, back to the man he used to be. You see, his story doesn't start in some remote monastery. No, it starts right in the middle of royal power, as a brilliant and trusted minister in the great Pandya kingdom.
Before he was known as Manikyavasagar, his name was Vadavudar, and this guy was a true prodigy. He mastered all the scriptures when he was just a kid, and his wisdom was so famous that the king appointed him prime minister. He even gave him the title greatest scholar of the southern king. I mean, by any worldly standard, Vadavudar had made it. He was at the absolute peak of success.
But as these stories often go, a mission that seemed totally routine was about to change everything. The king sent his top minister to buy horses for the army, but Vadavudar was about to find something, or someone else, entirely.
Okay, so picture this. The king gives Vadavudar a massive amount of gold to buy the best war horses. But on his journey, he hears this divine sound, people chanting Lord Shiva's name. He follows it, and there, under a tree, he finds a guru, who, of course, is Lord Shiva in disguise. In that single moment, his whole world just flipped. He fell at the guru's feet, gave him every last coin of the king's treasure, and just started singing these beautiful, spontaneous hymns. The guru was so moved by his poetry that he gave him a brand new name.
And that new name was Manikyavasagar. It's so perfect because it tells you everything about his transformation. His words, his vachagam, were now seen as precious gems, or manikam, flowing from this deep well of divine love. He wasn't the king's minister anymore. He was God's poet.
So you see this total 180, right? The gold that was meant for war, for worldly power, got completely repurposed. Manikyavasagar used every bit of it to build a huge, magnificent temple for Lord Shiva, right there on the spot where he met his guru. He chose the divine path, but you can be sure the king was not going to be happy about it.
And this is where the story gets really dramatic. I mean, he abandoned his mission, he spent a fortune of the king's money. Manikyavasagar was about to face the king's rage full force. His new faith was about to be put to the ultimate test.
King Arimardana was, let's just say, less than pleased. He was furious. He summoned his minister back to the capital immediately. And when Manikyavasagar showed up with no horses and no money, the king's anger just exploded. He had his former prime minister thrown in prison and tortured.
But in his darkest moment, Manikyavasagar prayed, and Lord Shiva came to him in a dream, promising the horses would arrive on a specific day. Sure enough, on that day, a mind-blowing miracle happened. Shiva turned thousands of wild jackals into stunning war horses. Then, disguised as a horse merchant, he presented them to the king. The king was ecstatic. He freed Manikyavasagar right away. But wait, it's not over. That night, the magic wore off. The horses all turned back into jackals, howling and tearing the place apart before escaping back into the forest.
Now the king felt completely humiliated and tricked, so his fury was even worse than before. He ordered a new, even more cruel punishment. Manikyavasagar was dragged to the Vaigai River and forced to stand barefoot on the scorching hot sand, right under the blazing sun.
As the saint prayed through the pain, another miracle started. Suddenly, the Vaigai River began to flood the entire city of Madurai. The king panicked and ordered every single citizen to get out there and build up the riverbanks. There was this one elderly woman who couldn't work, so she hired a laborer. Yep, Shiva in disguise again, and offered him a simple rice cake as payment. But this laborer just goofed off and played around. When the furious king saw this, he struck the lazy worker with a stick. And get this, the second that stick landed,
The pain of that single blow was felt by every living creature in the entire universe, including the king himself. In that one shocking moment, the king finally understood.
The king, totally humbled by these miracles, fell at Manikyavasagar's feet and begged for forgiveness. Now, finally free from all his old duties, Manikyavasagar could begin the last and most famous chapter of his life, the one that would truly make him a legend.
He became a wandering holy man, traveling from place to place, eventually settling at the great temple of Chidambaram, a place considered the sacred center of the universe. And it was there, in a state of pure, constant devotion, that he composed his life's work, the Tiruvachagam, which means the sacred utterances.
And the story ends with this absolutely incredible event. As Manikyavasagar was reciting his hymns, an old Brahmin, a scholar, showed up. He said he wanted to write the poems down so he could learn them and find salvation himself. The saint agreed. So for days, Manikyavasagar recited and the old Brahmin wrote every single word down. The moment the very last verse was finished, the Brahmin just vanished. Manikyavasagar knew right away that it had been Lord Shiva the whole time. The next morning, the temple priests found the finished manuscript just sitting there on the steps of the holiest shrine. And at the very end was that divine signature, a note saying that the Lord of Chidambaram himself wrote it down.
The priests were, of course, completely floored. They took the manuscript to Manikyavasagar and asked him, "You have to explain this to us. What is the deep meaning behind these profound words?" I mean, what could he possibly say to explain a work that God himself had written down?
But he didn't give some long, complicated lecture. He just led the priests into the heart of the temple, pointed to the beautiful statue of the dancing Lord Shiva, and said, "He is the meaning. The source of the words and the meaning of the words, they were one and the same."
And with those final words, Manikyavasagar walked into the inner sanctum, and in front of everyone, he dissolved into a blinding flash of light, merging completely with the divine. His amazing journey, from a powerful prime minister to a perfect saint, was finally complete. But his words, written by the hand of God, were left behind for all of us.
The story of Manikyavasagar really makes you think, doesn't it? It challenges everything we think we know about power and success. It asks us if a life of pure faith can become so strong that it actually changes reality itself, proving that maybe the greatest treasures aren't the ones you can buy with gold.